Welcome to Keep What You Earn, your judgment and jargon-free zone for entrepreneurs of all levels. Get ready to learn how to scale your business, save money in taxes, and create a business that grows your wealth. If it feels like the financial side of business is like eating your vegetables, well then think of this podcast as the ranch dressing to make the process a little more enjoyable. My name is Shannon. I'm a CPA and business owner on a mission to simplify money and empower others through knowledge. I hope this episode inspires you to take action, but remember that the information we share is for educational purposes only and is not individual tax advice. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start the show. So one of the most common questions that comes up in the role of a CFO is around compensation, hiring, when you can hire someone, how much you can afford to pay them, and overall how to handle the additional cash flow issue of hiring people. Because a lot of folks, this is your biggest expense, especially if you're a service-based business and agency model. This is your biggest expense is labor, and you're investing a lot in people. Not just from a financial standpoint, but you're investing a lot of time in training them. And during that time, you're probably not making any money from their work. So you're really straight up investing in the training, hoping it will pay dividends later. And it's a really serious investment. So when we talk about this with clients, we really go through what this is going to look like. And in this episode, what I wanted to do was walk you through a bit of what we consider in compensation plans and what we do as CFOs to help with this, because this is kind of the cornerstone of what makes a CFO over a CPA. And yes, I am a CPA, but when we talk about CPA in the traditional sense of what you guys probably associate with it, I'm talking about the accountant, the tax pro, the bookkeeper, the historical analyzer. What we're talking about now is the future-focused projector. So when we look at compensation planning, what we have to do is do a really good cash flow forecast. And I've talked about this tool on the show before, but what a cash flow forecast actually does is it takes the cash that's in your bank account right now. You list out all the ways that money's going to be coming in. So you list all the people who are coming in the entrance and you list all the people who are going out the exit. So what's coming in the coming, say, week, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 months, 12 months, and then what's going out. And the timing of all of those things. It's so important to understand the timing of these things because this is how we plot and we project when it would make sense to hire somebody, because we look at when can you have enough buffer in your cash balance where it is okay if you're paying this person for, say, 4 to 6 months and not making a dime more. Because A, you're too busy training them to be doing any biz dev, let's just say, and you're actually not able to really maximize and optimize their time because they're still learning. So we always factor it in as 4 to 6 months of straight cost, no additional revenue, no additional capacity opening. You are just focused on onboarding them and training them into the job. So when can we afford to take that cash flow hit? And that is the biggest consideration. But we also look at how you're going to structure the payment to them, because what you may not realize, because a lot of us are kind of embedded in the corporate culture of I must hire them as a W-2 and I must pay them a salary because that's what they're expecting. Here's what I want you to keep in mind is you have to do your due diligence. You have to do your research. You have to see what the market is paying that person for that skill set. It's going to really depend on the role. It's going to really depend on where they're coming from, what they're used to, what the market is doing, all of these external factors. And I trust that you are equipped and that you are skilled to go do that research. And what I'm going to talk about instead is the internal considerations, what you need to be paying attention to. So when we look at compensation as it relates to your cash flow, keep in mind, and I need this reminder too, that you are not here just to serve and give them money and like to support them. And it is really hard when you're a human hiring a human to try to make it work for your business first, because you do want to help somebody out. You do want to hire them for what they're worth. You actually want to be competitive and overpay because you want top talent. At least that's how I operate usually. And it's hard to kind of have that sobering moment of, yeah, but I can't afford that. So like I have to get a little scrappy and get creative on how I'm going to structure the compensation. And that's where these different strategies come out. So one of the things that we always talk about with founders is we consider, a mixed model of compensation. So here's the thing. I want you to ask yourself this question. Is this person I'm hiring going to directly impact revenue in my company? Directly. Are they going to be selling? Are they going to be, directly impacting retention in terms of serving clients? Are they going to be directly involved with the client or with the prospect in a way where I can connect revenue to that person and how they're operating? Now, here's an example of people who would and people who wouldn't. I would consider, if you're hiring an accountant, a lawyer, an operations manager, a VA, a graphic designer, no. But if you're hiring, let's just say you run a marketing agency and you're hiring more social media managers, you run an accounting firm like mine and you're hiring another accountant or another CFO or a bookkeeper in the practice to serve clients. But if you're hiring someone who's directly connected to revenue generation, here's what I want you to consider: commission model. Because here's why this can tend to work. Even if it is somebody who's used to a salary, hear me out. If they have any entrepreneurial bone in their body, and if you value the growth potential, you value someone who is willing to participate, get scrappy, roll up their sleeves, and help you build, this is really important because their openness to this model is going to tell you everything. So if they're open to it, you give them a base pay for essentially showing up, coming to meetings, doing internal stuff, making SOPs, operations, and admin. They have to feel like they're compensated for that somehow. They have to feel like they are compensated for the work that they're doing that is outside of pure revenue generation. So there's going to be a small base pay. And then you add a commission, say per client or per insert driver here. Because if you can connect what they get paid with the external result of, so for example, in my practice, more clients equals more money for that person. The more clients they can handle, the more they can make. There's no ceiling on it. That they're only limited by their own capacity. So what are they going to do? What are they motivated to do in this role? They are motivated to expand capacity, to take on more clients, to do things faster, to do things more efficiently, to find better ways, to innovate a little bit and find ways to do things better. And that's actually part of our value structure. So if we're trying to say we always want to be innovating, then this actually feeds that value, because if somebody has that value, they're going to get real scrappy and figure out a way to add another client into their roster that they can handle by making their life a lot easier and finding easier ways to do the ones they already have. And then building better processes and SOPs to do it faster and to enable faster delegation to junior people on your team. So why I say that there's a hybrid model of base plus commission that I don't think people consider enough outside of sales organizations. This is very common in sales organizations because you'll get a sales commission based on what gets closed or what gets collected from customers. Side note, collection over contracted all the time, 100%. But what you want to do is consider what would equate to, based on the capacity that you expect this person to have or how many clients you expect this person to take on or whatever your driver is. It could be clients, it could be, whatever your widget is that you're producing, that you're counting, that drives revenue. So it could be customers, and it could be, that's probably the most common, but it could just be anything that you're measuring that they can take on. How many tax returns they can do if you're doing taxes, or how many outputs they can do. So just figure out how many that is and how much you want them to participate. And then you figure out, well, what would a normal human being easily be able to accomplish in less than 40 hours? Then that becomes kind of that mark where they hit a typical market rate or higher. So I actually did this in my organization where I figured out there was a level that I wanted this person to make in terms of salary. And I backed into, okay, if they can do 10 clients, then they're going to hit that salary. And that should be way easy to do. And in fact, I think I hit it at like 8 clients. They hit it at 8 clients and they would make whatever their market value was or market salary was. And then I said, well, in reality, I think they can take on 10 clients. So what that's going to do is motivate them to push harder, motivate them to take on 10 and then make more than market. And that will actually keep better talent in your 4 walls, because that will ensure that you have something competitive. Not to mention, people should want to work for you anyway, but the fact that you can remain competitive in salary and that they see a clear path to growth is also really helpful. So I'm an advocate for this type of strategy in many situations, but what you have to do is understand that there's going to be a difference in perspective depending on what the role is, depending on who you're talking about, depending on their values and their talent. You're going to have to customize this. So I would also warn you, do not offer a percentage of revenue or a percentage of profit to people who have no control over that metric. This is actually really frustrating for the person on the other side. And I'm going to tell you a story about what happened to me in my career. So I was working in a company doing sales, and what happened was I was in client service. I was like a consultant helping implement this technology for accounting firms. And I loved it. I had a straight salary. I was making above market. I was happy. I was working 40 hours. And I was just like, that even keeled, like I go to the job, I come home, I'm not stressed out. This is great. And then I switched over into the sales organization. I had a ton of fun there. I had an absolute blast. I loved doing sales calls. I loved being part of the sales organization. It's when I really tapped into that entrepreneurial spirit. And I think that's where it kind of opened up, where I was like, this is actually really fun. This is a whole new skill that I'm learning. And I was what we call in the industry a sales engineer. So I was basically demonstrating the product during sales calls where sales reps would be kind of selling it. Now, if you're familiar with any technological product, you kind of know that the sales rep has basically never used the product. The sales rep is following a script or following, bullet points of what they've been told to feature about the product. They've been told the pain points, the pleasure points, and all of those little branding things that they need to articulate. And they're really good at making that speech, And then people like me are in the background explaining the how behind it. Like, this is how we handle those things. And if there's one thing you know about accountants, we are kind of in the details. So I actually, quote unquote, stole the show a lot of times because people would ask me questions on the details and I'd be able to answer them. And what they realized was that I was actually decent at selling this product because I could tell the stories and I could get into the details. And here's what I'm telling you. I got super frustrated in that role because I was given a compensation structure when I left the consulting over to the sales, where I was no longer paid a straight salary. I was paid a much lower salary and then a commission per closed sale that I was attached to. Here's why that's a problem. Even though I was in the sales organization, even though I was close to that process, the sales reps were not closing. The sales reps were not following up on emails. The sales reps were not getting back to the customers. The sales reps weren't telling the story effectively, and they weren't getting through to the customer. And although I did my best, and I actually, if I had to say it, I'd probably say I could probably have sold a few of those myself, but the sales reps weren't closing. And then I was going, shoot, that's my commission. That's my pay. That's like, I feel like I have no control over the outcome of my work because I'm doing a kick-ass job over here. And then you're not following up on the email where someone said they wanted to buy. So like now I suffer. And I said, no more of that. So here is where I would caution you. You have to make sure that if you are going to have a compensation model where somebody's performance or someone's pay is linked to a metric, they better have direct control over that metric. You want to make sure that they're really able to drive that and that they're motivated to do so. Because if you're going to connect their performance and connect their pay to something that they don't have control of, that is insanely frustrating. And I will go back on this and say, for commission-based work, it is much easier, I'll say, and simpler to implement if you can easily connect that commission to a unit of production, a unit of work. While you're starting out with a new person, it can be really challenging to adopt this because it may feel like, oh my gosh, like I don't even know how much to give that person per client or per whatever. That's okay. Here's what else you can do. You can do a flat rate. You could do a flat rate per week until you figure out how many widgets or how many things they can do per week, and then go from there to figure out their capacity, because you're really just trying to feel out like, what is this person's capacity? What can they do? And you have to start with really being honest with yourself on how long things take you and triple it. Triple it. If it takes you an hour, it's going to take them 3 or 4 hours. Okay. So you have to be okay with that. And you have to be patient enough to let them get to the place where they can catch up with you. But you have to understand that this is a major investment that you're going to be making, and that you have to be really on top of how you're planning this and how you're going to be, defining how people will earn money in your organization. And Here's the other appeal of doing percentages or doing some type of commission model. And this could be, by the way, a certain number of dollars per client. It could also be a certain percentage. We do a percentage here because, heck, it motivates me to quote at full price, because whenever I feel compelled to be like, oh, I could lower the price just to get a yes, like we've all done that. I always think about my employees and I go, oh, they'll kill me. They don't want 10% of this. They want 10% of that. Like they want me to be charging full price, and I want to do right by them. It actually motivates me to make sure I'm accountable to our prices. And the other thing is it can help you maintain a constant margin when you're using percentages of your total revenue, because let's just say you have a target, this is pretty common, of 35% labor cost, of your revenue. So basically it's like a third. So if you make $100,000 in revenue, you're spending $35,000 on contractors or labor, then that's your target, which is roughly $3,000 a month. So now there's kind of your ballpark range of what you can spend, and then you can divide it up to figure out what makes sense. So you can also just charge straight 35% or 30% pay them 30% on each dollar of revenue that comes in. Say, hey, you get base pay plus, 20% of revenue, which might in total equal about 30%, so you have to figure out what blend makes sense for you and what your ceiling is in terms of spending. Using a percentage can actually help you control that and help you keep your margins to where they need to be. The other thing is, I haven't mentioned hourly billing and hourly charging of time or anything like that. You have to really get clear on if an hour of time is really connected well to the output of that time. So for many, it can be. So it would be how many hours you spent doing XYZ because you're charging for those hours, right? So you have to look at hourly cost versus hourly revenue. If you're making money by the hour, it makes sense to pay money by the hour. But in general, for a lot of service-based businesses and professional services, I'm really moving away from the hourly billing advice, and I'm really moving toward some type of, steady rate, something we can predict, something we can control, and something that is really fair for both parties, where they feel like, there isn't like this big brother over the timesheet, or you don't have to review the timesheet every week or be tracking time. And you definitely don't want your customers to feel a burden if somebody's spending more time on an account that they're going to get charged more. So that variability can actually cause a lot of frustration and insecurity. So I actually recommend moving everything to, as much as you can, a flat rate. So really, when we're looking at compensation, we want to be considering how much can I really afford to spend? Right? That actually should be the beginning, is how much can my cash flow handle? And then getting into how can I structure that in a competitive way where the right type of person that I want to hire is going to be attracted to that. And when you can kind of marry all of those things together, then you have kind of that sweet spot in that Venn diagram of, this is something that the person values. It aligns with their external factors of market rate, and it aligns with my internal profit margin. And when you can do all of that together, that's where you have magic. So I would encourage you, if you're thinking about hiring, to go through this exercise of the cash flow forecast and figure out what can my cash flow tolerate, and then figuring out what type of talent can I get for that, and does that align? Because if it doesn't, then maybe the first thing you should do is focus on that cash flow. And generally, I would say no matter what, you should be focusing on cash flow, but this is actually going to drive that too and give you more of a goal of where you want to be and how you want to be saving up money. So I hope that helps, and I'll see you on the next episode. Sometimes don't you wish you could just Google or ask ChatGPT what is deductible for your taxes? I wish it were that easy, but the truth is that deducting something can really vary, and it's really hard to get a straight answer for your business in particular, but I made something to help. My free tax deduction guide walks you through hundreds of example tax deductions that can apply to your business, along with a mini training on what actually makes something deductible so you can add more to your list and cater it to your specific industry or type of business. This is all for free, and it's at the link in the show notes. Go check it out. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your podcast platform. This small action goes a long way for podcasters to get our message heard by more business owners just like you. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to information about our guests and ways to get in touch with me. We'll see you on the next episode.